Hello, welcome back. DJ Vic Vapor with you again. So in the previous tutorial, we took a look at LFO modulation and ways to manipulate and create movement within the sample. But in this tutorial, for the sampler part 3, I want to take a look at what I think is the most unique and most powerful aspect of sampler within Bitwig Studio. And that is the ability to load multiple samples. A couple ways to do that. There's already multiple sample presets loaded in our library, so we can simply click here and browse for multiple samples under multi-sample, and any of these that we choose to drag in are going to have multiple samples. See how there's more than one sample here? Let me OK this, and then once we've got multiple samples loaded, you can click Edit Multi-Sample. Now each individual one, if I click on it, I can see where it starts, the parameters, how it's key tracked. I can adjust the gain, start, and all that fun stuff. But what if we wanted to load our own? Let's take a look at that. So we will go ahead and get rid of this guy, grab another sampler. And now let's say we wanted to put our own samples in here. So we right click anywhere in the black area, open area here, create new multi-sample. And now it's a blank multi-sample template ready to go. And then we want to hit edit multi-sample. And it's going to bring up this larger window for us to begin working with. There's nothing in here yet, but let's go ahead and start grabbing some of these waveforms. So I'll grab this guy, and when I bring it over here, right now you see it get small when I go up with my mouse. I'm clicking and holding, by the way. I haven't let go yet. I clicked and I dragged it over, and I haven't let go with my mouse yet. But as I go up, I can narrow this sample down to one key or one note. And if I come down with my cursor, I can widen it out and move it, and drag and move it in any direction I like. So since we're going to do multiple samples, I'm just going to make it, kind of about there, and then I'll let go. And now I've got my sample in here ready to go. I can select a low, root, or high note range for it. I can select a velocity range for it to play on. I can fine tune the sense. I can turn on and off key tracking. I can even reverse the sample right here if I choose. I can add gain to it. I can change the start and stop range. I can loop it. I can change the beginning and the end. So quite powerful adjustments just right in here. And then also once we're over the actual sample area itself, if I hover over the bottom, I can bring it up or bring it down, and I can bring it in and move it out. So when I bring it up and down, though, this is kind of important in understanding multiple samples. Let's say I bring it up here. You see how it changed the velocity to 95? It was at 1. Now I've moved it up to 95. Now if I didn't want to try to grab it right here, if it gets a little annoying, you can simply do it here with the velocity too. You can fine dial in what you want. But what that's essentially doing now is assigning this sample to only be triggered when the velocity for that particular key range, if there's a note that's in this key range, is hit at a velocity that's between 63 and 127, it'll trigger this sound. That's important to know when understanding how you're setting up those sounds to be triggered, maybe through modulation, or how they're going to be used within whatever maybe MIDI source is triggering them. Certain sounds may or may not be triggered depending on the velocity. So that's very, very important to understand. So let's bring in another sample. So I simply just hovered over, got it dialed in close enough, and then I can bring this guy over and match it. And then I want to bring this guy down to be right up against whatever we left off on. So I left off on 63. On this guy, I want to go up to 62. Well, I guess not right there. I want to come down to 60, or right here. So 62, and this one will start at 63. So from 1 to 62, I'm only going to hear this sound, and then from 63 to 127, I'll hear that sound. And let's just use those two as our example. So I'll X out of there. So now we've got these two sounds, and let's change our note pattern here. It's not going to work as one long note. Let's do some variations here. That should work good enough for us. All right, so if I watch this, it's only that one sound. Like I was saying, we're not triggering the lower sound because it's a different velocity range. So one of the ways we can do that would be through modulation. Now I can go in here. Actually, I think the best way to do it would be if I can find it. There it is. Note velocity. I had to find it there for us. So there's a note velocity tool within Bitwig Studio that now, if I place it before my multi-samples, so I can literally have hundreds of samples in here, I can dial in with note velocity how each of them are being triggered, and then I can actually set modulation to this. So let's see if we can dial in both samples being triggered using our note velocity. So see, now we've got the flexibility using note velocity to make both of those become triggered notes. And another way we can do that, and one of the ways I really like to use more often than not, is within the MIDI clip itself. So let's take a look at our MIDI clip as it is, our different notes. What you can do is select the clip, go to your inspector, and then with the velocity here, you can pull open this chaos screen, and now I can just dial in some chaos and mean and spread this guy around a little bit. But essentially what that's doing, let me open it up here so you can see, is now we have different velocities for each note happening because we've dialed in a chaotic pattern, and you can see them move as I move this up and down. That also is going to create those different volume levels to allow our notes to be triggered at our samples to be triggered at different notes. So let's go back and take a look at it now. I'll turn this guy off. Well, we probably didn't get the velocity just right. So let's go back and dial it in, making sure. So that's another way to kind of trigger all those sounds back and forth. So hopefully that gives you a good idea of how to use the power of the sampler over the last 2 or 3 tutorials. It's not an in-depth kind of look at it, but just a quick overview because it really benefits how you set up this drum machine that we're discussing. So let's continue on with our drum machine course and go ahead and begin to look at other ways to bring in sounds, manipulate, and build different elements within a drum machine.